Last week's Torah portion. Anybody remember what that was about?
Like the unclean and clean. Like you couldn't touch things. If you touched a dead animal, no matter if it was a kosher animal or not, you were still unclean for a certain amount of time. I just remember we beat that over the head.
If you were touching an animal?
Dead animal.
A dead one, a carcass. Right? A carcass. Right? So it's typically an animal that still has its blood in it, but that has passed away. All right. So last Torah portion, we discovered that we got to go into the actual tabernacle, right? Aaron and his sons, they were in there for 7 days. Aaron and his sons were in there for 7 days. And then, on the 8th day, what happened? It said the Lord appeared, remember? God appeared in his glory. And when his glory came down, what happened? So the glory of the Lord came down. The people, they started shouting. They fell on their faces. And then there was 2 sons of Aaron that did something. What did they do?
Was it Nadab and Abihu?
Nadab and Abihu, yeah. Okay, and I don't think I covered this last week, but I want to connect the dots today before we get into our study today. Do you guys see the connection with Nadab and Abihu, what they did? Because not only did they offer strange fire, did they offer the incense when it wasn't recommended or required or asked to, but who, in the instructions that God gave Moses, who was supposed to be the one that brought the incense to the Father?
The high priest.
The high priest. And who's the high priest?
Aharon.
You're right. And they were doing something beyond their duties. They were usurping the authority of their father. They were doing what was right in their own eyes. And then right after that happened and God came down and, consumed them in fire, what was the very first thing that the Lord told Aaron and Moses? What was the very first thing that he started instructing them on concerning this matter, right after this happened? He tells them the very first instruction was, whenever you come into my place, into my living room, make sure that you are not drunk. Make sure you don't have any strong drink when you come in here. And whatever Nadab and Abihu, when they did this, you notice that Aaron, it said that he kept his mouth shut when this happened. It's almost like he knew what they did was wrong. Now, let's connect the dots. The very beginning of your Bible starts with Adam and Eve, right? Trying to seize their own autonomy. Trying to eat from this tree of good and bad so they can define what's right and wrong in their own eyes. Basically, taking the authority, that God had over us, and saying that God's ways weren't right, but we're going to listen to this creature in that garden, and we're going to seize our own rules the way this creature has in his rebellion against God. Okay? And so they end up, right, kicked out of God's presence for this. Fast forward, whoop, God brings the flood over the earth with Noah. Noah gets off the boat. Noah does what? Plants a vineyard.
Makes some wine.
What did Noah do?
Got drunk.
He got drunk. The first instruction from these 2 brothers is, or actually to Moses and Aaron, at the death of these 2 sons in God's living room, 2 dead bodies in God's place, is whenever you come in here, don't get drunk. So Noah, boom, God saves him, spares him, plants a vineyard, he gets drunk. And what happens while he's drunk in his tent?
He's exposed, and one of his sons finds him.
And he's exposed, one of his sons finds him, and what does that son do?
I guess he makes fun of him.
Huh?
He makes fun
uncovers his nakedness.
Uncovers his nakedness? makes fun of him.
The other one covers him, right?
Right.
Walks backwards and covers him. Right?
Didn't the other two took a blanket and backed
backwards? Yeah. So Noah gets drunk, and in his own tent, in his own living room, one of his sons mocks his father. Right? And basically mocking the authority that his father has over him. And he goes to make fun of his father and tells everybody else, come and see him. Look at him. Well, the other brothers, they walk backwards. Right? And so that brother who made fun of his father in his nakedness gets cursed. His name is what? His name was Ham, but actually, so his son got cursed, which is Canaan. Right? Same stuff here. These two guys, in God's living room, in God's tent, they go, just like Adam and Eve in the garden, just like Ham. Now they're repeating that same system as the Garden in Eden, right? This tabernacle, which is this portable Eden. They do it right in God's living room, again. So you guys see the pattern that's happening. And right after that happens, God has to give them these set of rules, which we are still going over today, starting in chapter 12. But this all stemmed from Nadab and Abihu dying. This is a continual conversation from that point of why God is going to continue to talk to us the importance of coming into his space. So everything we're reading is a byproduct of what Nadab and Abihu did. Right? So that's why God is doing it, to let us know the importance of coming into God's living room. Like, you don't go into Kyle's house and disrespect Kyle in his house. Disrespecting him anywhere is bad. But the level goes even higher of disrespect when you do it inside of his house. And so right here, you had the very first service inside the tabernacle, and it went south. Right? It went south. So, you guys ready? So, we're in chapter 12 right now. And we are going to talk about, remember, the first 7 chapters were all about rituals, or offerings. I guess you can say it was offerings. And there was 5 offerings. And out of the 5 offerings, only 3 of them were good. 3 of them were very good. 2 of them were because we messed up our relationships either with each other or with God. And now, chapters 8, 9, and 10 were about the priest, Nadab and Abihu, right? And the ordination of going into that tabernacle and its service and the mess up there. And then 11 was what? Talking about the food, the pure food, right? Yeah, we're going to talk about, so it was the food, and that was the very center of the Torah, is Leviticus 11. The very center, the very heart of Torah is there, right? But he's not done talking yet. He's going to continue this topic of purity, okay? There's going to be 3 words, and I'll write in black. The 3 words is going to be impure, pure, and holy. Okay?
You're going to give us the Hebrew words for those?
The Hebrew words. So, I believe this is what? Tamei?
Tamei, yeah.
Tamei. So, something like that. And then I think this is Tahor. And I think this is Kadosh. Okay? So, those are the words we're going to talk about. God says, this is where we live. We live in a state, right? We live in a state. He wants us to live in a state of purity. And as you're in a state of purity, if you touch anything impure, you will become impure. And if you touch anything holy in his holy place, you become holy. So this is contagious and this is contagious. And he wants you to know the difference, right? Because this is where we're at right now. Okay? But he wants us to become holy. But he wants us to be conscious of this. Remember Psalms 24. Who can ascend into the hill of the Lord? Who can ascend into his holy habitation? Those who have clean hands, pure hearts, and didn't speak anything evil with their lips. The name of our Torah portion is Tazria, which some of your versions may say that it means has conceived. So it's she conceived, right? So she conceived is the name of today's portion. You ready? Yahweh spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the children of Israel, saying, if a woman has conceived seed and born a male, she will be impure for 7 days, according to the days of the separation of her infirmity, will she be impure. And on the 8th day, the flesh of his foreskin will be circumcised. And she will then continue in the blood of her purifying for 33 days. She will touch no hallowed thing or come into the tabernacle until the days of her purifying are fulfilled." So stop. What are we talking about? And who's speaking to who here?
Yahweh speaking to Moses.
So Yahweh speaking to Moses, okay? And what is he telling Moses?
About a woman giving birth, conceiving and giving birth.
So a woman is conceiving and she's giving birth to who?
A male.
Child.
A male child. Okay, so she's going to conceive, she's going to give birth to a male child, and then what? What does he tell us?
There's a specific amount of time that the purification happens where she's still impure.
So on the baby's 8th day, the circumcision takes place, but then for another 33 days.
Is it 8
Right.
plus 33, or is it just 33 from? Yeah, I think it's just 33.
So she's going to be impure, right, for 7 days, right? So she's going to have a male, right? I was going to put kid. I'm so into goats right now, right? Huh? Oh, they're talking to me. Okay, so she has a baby boy.
Yeah, so the 33 days are total, or are they in addition to the 8 days?
So let's break it down. So she has the baby boy, and then it first tells us that she's going to be impure for how many days first off?
7 days.
Okay, so she's impure for 7 days. Okay, so again, does being impure mean that you are morally wrong?
No.
Does it mean that you're sinning?
No.
No. That's not what it means. Correct. Okay, this just means don't go into the tabernacle, into God's living room right now.
And don't handle the holy things.
And don't handle the holy things, right? And let other people know that you're in a state of impurity in case they want to go and approach the Lord. That would not be good. So understand, it's not morally wrong. It's not a sin. This is part of life, right? In creation, in the genesis of life happening here. Okay? So, that was number 1. So she's going to have a boy. She's going to be impure for 7 days. According to the days of her separation of her infirmity, will she be impure? What's going to happen on the 8th day?
Circumcision.
On the 8th day, they're going to circumcise the boy, right? So now they're going to circumcise him on the 8th day circumcision. Now, remember this, because this is going to be important when we compare and contrast this to when she has a female and when she has a girl. Okay? When she gives birth to a girl. So, the 8th day, they're going to get him circumcised, and then she will then continue in the blood of her purifying 33 days.
So it is 33 days after the 8.
It sounds like in addition to the 7, because she will then continue for 33 days.
So that's 40 days total.
So,
But I don't know.
then
That's how I read it. Ready?
33 days for purification.
So we could come up with 3 different time frames here.
Okay?
Yep.
What is it?
33 days total, or 33 days plus the 7 days of the original impurity, or after the 8th day of the circumcision,
Okay.
plus 33.
So this is how I see it with a lot of other people. I could be wrong. I don't think I am, but I could be. But the way I see it is, for 7 days after she's had the baby, she's impure. But then, on the 8th day, they can bring the baby to get circumcised. And then after that 8th day, then she goes back into a purification process for 33 days. So,
That's the most logical.
that's how I see it. That it's like God covers her somehow for the 8th day to bring her baby, on the 8th day to get circumcised. So 7 days she's impure after she bores a male, and then on the 8th day it's like she can come, get him circumcised, but then she goes and continues in purification for 33 days. John.
What is the name of that? Is it Bris Milah or something?
Brit Milah is like the covenant of circumcision for the 8th day, yeah. So,
You know, and later on when it describes the other things that you gotta, stipulations, there's a health thing to it, you know, to me in my mind.
so there could be a health thing to it. I'm sure that there could be a health thing to it. But remember that the circumcision that was given to Abraham was for a remembrance to Abraham and his family of a promise that God gave to Abraham, that anytime he looked down and he saw himself, he remembers the promise that God gave him, that his family was going to be like the stars of the heavens and the sand of the seashore. And there is nothing and nobody that's going to stop that. Not even the people who want to depopulate the world are not going to stop God's promises to Abraham. So anytime Abraham saw himself naked, it was a reminder that God made him a promise. Because Abraham forgot a lot. God promised him, hey, you know, you're going to populate the earth. You're going to be a father of many nations. And the next day he's telling Pharaoh, this is my sister. And the reason he's doing that is because he thinks Pharaoh's going to kill him. After God just told him he was going to populate the world.
So that Pharaoh can have his 70-year-old or 70-year-old wife.
She was an old woman, but she had it going on because all the Egyptians were like, hey, check this girl out, you know? Yeah, that's why I joke around. If you don't want people to look at your wife, then don't marry a beautiful one, you know, because it's going to happen. So anyway, you have this 8-day circumcision, and it was supposed to remind Abraham and his people forever forward that your children are a blessing. Your children are a miracle. Because God chose a no-name guy from the backwoods, him and his wife, who were barren, couldn't have any children, and he brought a miracle. And through them, we now say Father Abraham had many sons. Right? That's all a miracle. So this was the covenant. And that's what circumcision was birthed from, was that promise. So every time you saw that, it was a symbol to know that your family, your existence, and you here in this faith was that God made a promise to Abraham. And God is not a man, and he doesn't break his promises. He's not like us, and he's faithful to us, even when we're not. And you know that all from what he promised Abraham about how big his family was going to be. So the 8th day circumcision, remember it. And man, does not the Lord give us so much things to help us remember, because we're such a forgetful people. I mean, from zeets to foreskins, yeah, to Aaron's bud that, you know, his stick that budded, almonds, to the manna, you know, there's just so many things that he's going to have them set up as pillars, as memorials, to help you remember, because we forget a lot, right? Just like Moses. I mean not Moses, Abraham. Abraham forgot once, twice, like 3, 4 times God's promise to him. Like where him and Sarah even laugh at God, like, that ain't gonna happen, you know. So my opinion is to have a baby. She's impure for 7 days, but on this 8th day she can come, present him for circumcision. He can get circumcised, and then she goes 33 days into her purification for that male child.
So 40 days total, she's considered impure.
So for 40 days total, she's considered impure, but on this 8th day, she's got to get out of jail free card. I don't know how to explain that, but that's what it appears like. Okay? So, let's keep reading here. And for further study, you can look at Luke 1:59 on that as well. Okay, so because she will touch no hallowed thing or come into the tabernacle until the days of her purifying are fulfilled. Okay, so she's not going to enter until those 33 days of purification. But if she bears a female, she will be impure for 2 weeks, as in her separation, and she will continue in the blood of her purifying for 66 days. So now she's having a baby girl. How many days is she impure for a baby girl? 2 weeks is what?
14 days.
Okay, so she's 14 days impure.
And then there's no temple visit.
No temple visit, right? Or tabernacle visit. And then, what else?
Then 66 days.
And
of
then, yeah.
purification.
Then,
Why does it separate between 2 weeks and then go 66?
66 days.
Why wouldn't you say?
For
Is there a
purification.
difference in the impure and purification?
It's double of what the male's like.
Yeah. But is that the same process, or is there something else going on in the 66 days versus the 14 days?
80 days.
So this is a total of 40. Okay, and this one is a total of how many?
80.
80.
I'm just not understanding why is it separated. 2 weeks you're like this, you're impure, and then you continue to be impure for 66 days.
So you're
Oh, I see what she said.
so what's happening is you're impure for 7 days and you're impure for 14 days. And now after those days you start a purification process where you start cleansing. So so understand impure, or some of your versions has unclean or whatever. This does not have anything to do with sin or morality.
Right.
Okay? What happened is if there's blood and fluids coming out, it's like you're a body full of life and you're leaking life out. Life is being let out of you. Okay? So it's no longer in you. It's like oozing out of you. And so if there's a loss of life, I guess can be the picture, what makes you impure. Okay? Because we live in this mortal body that longs to put on immortality one day. And until that immortality comes upon us, we leak life out of us. This is ceremonial. Remember, because God has given us this recipe of instructions right after Nadab and Abihu went and corrupted his living room. Right? Because he didn't let Moses or anyone into his house prior to some instructions of how to get in there. And finally, when he allowed us to go in there, after all this covering, or what your Bible says atonement, that we did in order for them to go in there, they went in there, and Nadab and Abihu, the first service, they messed up. They usurped their dad's authority and only do what the high priest is supposed to do. They offer their incense, and God's like, no, they're not following my rules in my house. This is what happened to Noah's son Ham. This is what happened to Adam and Eve in the garden. They didn't listen to my instructions in my house. And because of that, there are consequences. Right? And so after Nadab and Abihu, he starts giving us these instructions. And so what he's telling us is, with this purification, is that no, having a baby is not a sin. This is beautiful. But because there's a loss of life in there, you can't come into God's place yet. Enjoy your baby, right, for 40 days or for 80 days. And so what's the difference between having a son and a female? Or a male and a female? Why is he 40 days and having a girl is 80 days before you can enter?
Beats me.
So I can give you an opinion. Okay, is this 8th day circumcision. After this boy gets the foreskin cut off, that's the only day he's gonna bleed. That he should bleed. Unless there's like a complication that went on or something. His time of bleeding happened on his 8th day of life. And he's not gonna bleed from there again. Unless he's like sick or something. I hope that never happens. But typically, that 8th day, that's when he's cut up, right? And that's his day of bleeding. But a woman, both of them, her and the baby, are going to continue to leak life out of them for the rest of their life until they hit a certain age, maybe. They're going to continue to have that blood life leak out of them in that sense. Does that make any sense to you? And I believe that's kind of what that is a picture of, is that his bleeding is done. But both of these women are not. They're going to bleed to purify themselves.
That's pretty interesting, yeah.
You know, and to kind of touch on what you were talking about, how you were saying later on in the Torah, it's going to tell us that when a woman is on her time of the month, don't touch her or else you're going to be impure to go into the tabernacle. So don't sleep with your wife when she's on her time of the month. And Paul goes even further on that. And Paul says, hey guys, I know if you and your wife, you know, he talks to, writing to Corinth, he says, if you're just a man that just is so passionate to be in the bedroom with your wife, and she's on that time of the month, he says, I would take that time to go and pray and fast. Well, make that your ritual praying and fasting of the month. Make that what you do. And to me, that makes a lot of sense as a health coach, because whenever you crash diet or you fast and don't eat, you guess what? Your testosterone goes down, your hormones go, your libido goes down, you know, and you don't have that drive no more. Ask anybody who like just reduces their calories, you're just not gonna have that same I'm a man feeling anymore. And so to me, it's like Paul's being pretty cool there, because not only is it neat in the spiritual sense, but also in a physical sense, it makes a lot of sense to help you not want to desire, you know, to have, you know, romance while your wife is off limits, and helps you just focus on the Lord, helps your libido, everything drop, so you're not desiring someone else or something of that sort. But just makes so cool sense there. But just kind of touch on what you were talking about. So 40 days, 80 days. Is this okay with you guys? Is this sitting okay with you? All right, so when the days of her purifying are fulfilled for a son or for a daughter, she will bring a lamb of the first year for a burnt offering, and a young pigeon or a turtle dove for a sin offering to the door of the tent of meeting to the priest. And he will offer it before Yahweh and make a covering for her, and she will be cleansed from the issue of her blood. Okay? So, after her purification, when it's all done, whether it's a son or a girl, what is she bringing?
An offering.
Right? She's bringing a lamb, a pigeon or a turtle dove, right?
Well, the lamb is for a burnt offering,
Okay, lamb for a burnt offering.
and the pigeon or turtle dove is for a sin offering.
Okay, so the burnt offering that she wants to come up because she hasn't been able to come up to his presence, the tabernacle. So now she'll be able to, and she's bringing her come up and draw near offering, right? You raising your hand, Hannah?
Does it say what happens if she has twins?
Does it say what happens if she has twins? You
Later
know,
on it does, I think, doesn't it?
you said it does later
I
on?
think, maybe. I swear I've read that before.
I'm pretty sure it'd be the same time frame. I don't think.
Like
I
a
don't,
boy and a girl?
would they have a boy and a
It's
girl?
complicated, right? No, if it's a boy or a girl, then we have the variation between that.
I'm pretty sure that topic is covered somewhere.
Yeah,
I don't know
you
if it's in
find
the
stuff
Bible,
though,
if it's
right?
just like on
Longest.
other commentary talk. But I'm not going to answer now because I don't know off the top of my head. But I'm pretty sure that there's an answer for that, or an opinion or a response to it somewhere. So the lamb for a burnt offering, and what else?
The sin offering, pigeon or turtle dove.
A pigeon or turtle dove. Now, does it mean that she sinned just because she's bringing this offering?
Nope.
No, right? No. Just because she's bringing a sin offering doesn't mean she sinned. Right? Doesn't mean. And it's only a dove, right? A dove or a pigeon. Right? This is just the offerings that she's going to bring for her cleansing so she can approach. Okay? And that's whether she has a male or a female. Is that cool? And now she's free to come up into the tabernacle. Does this mean that she can't pray at her house and she's lost all communication with God in her life? No, not at all, right? Not at all. Because remember, even when, or let's see. Yeah, like when Yeshua, when he was a baby, messengers were still coming to talk to his parents. You guys remember that? Yeah, so just because that you're going to have a baby or you're going to be impure doesn't mean that God's not going to talk to you or you can't talk to God. Doesn't that mean? It just means you can't go into his house, into his holy throne room, right? You can't go mess up his living room. You can't go put your dirty shoes on his living room floor. That's why he tells Moses, when Moses saw him at the burning bush, he says, hey, take your shoes off because this is holy ground. There's something special about walking into God's throne room that's different anywhere else you may experience God. If you experience him at the tabernacle or the tent like Abraham did when he was like hanging out in his tent door in the heat of the day and he saw those three men talk to God and like he was just a pal, right? Ate meal with him and everything. Moses got to go up on that mountain and got to see God on the mountain. God actually put him in the cleft of a rock and covered it with his hand and let Moses see his glory and all that. But there is something different now when it's actually in the tabernacle, right? Or this tent, a meeting. There's a different level of his glory there to where you have to be in the state compared to anywhere else you experienced him. So it doesn't mean that you're cut off from God. So get that out of your mind if it's ever in there. All right? Let's keep reading. John? Oh, yeah. Verse 7. So this is the instruction for her who has borne a male or a female. And if she is not able to bring a lamb, then she could bring 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, the one for a burnt offering and the other for a sin offering. And the priest will make a covering for her, and she will be pure. Okay? So, if she can't afford a lamb, what can she bring?
Turtle.
2
A
young
turtle?
pigeons.
Yeah, 2 pigeons or 2 turtle doves. So, again, just like the first 7 chapters of Leviticus, God doesn't care about the monetary, right, cost of what you bring if you can't afford it. He's not concerned about that. If you can't afford it, if you can't afford an ox, bring a goat. If you can't afford a goat, bring some birds. If you can't bring these birds, bring some flour or some bread. If you can't afford to make the bread, then bring some flour. Right? Same thing here. If you can't afford the lamb, bring some doves or some pigeons. Brother John?
Did you read the last part of verse 7?
I thought I did.
Unless it's worded different than mine.
So
Just the last sentence of verse 7.
So
Just to compare to mine.
okay, so I'll start at the whole verse 7. It says, he will offer it before Yahweh and make a covering for her, and she will be cleansed or pure from the issue of her blood. This is the instruction for her who has borne a male or a female.
Well, so mine says this is the Torah for her who has given birth to a male. Yeah, that's why I was a little confused whether you read that.
Okay.
I didn't follow it there, but yeah. Instruction, it says there
Yeah.
in Torah.
Yeah,
Which
so-
is what Torah is, right?
Yeah.
Instruction.
Yeah. And remember, this is all coming after Nadab and Abihu. God is just giving them further instructions so when they walk into his presence, they don't end up dead on his living room floor. That's what this is for. This added stuff is like, okay. So, because Nadab and Abihu messed up just like Adam and Eve, messed up just like Ham, let me help you and give you further instructions when you come to my house. When you walk into my house, because you are so accustomed of being common, right? You live in the common world. But when you walk into my house, I'm not like the world. I'm different. I'm set apart, which you know as the word holy. I'm a little bit different. So when you come in here, you have to be like me. You have to come into this place like me. You have to walk back into my image and my likeness. Doesn't mean that being out there in the common world is bad. It just means when you come here, you understand my standards are a little bit higher than what's commonly known where you're at. Right? Okay. Oh, so we're in chapter 13. Look at that. Let's go. So Yahweh spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, when a man will have the skin of his flesh arising, a scab or a bright spot, it is the plague of leprosy in the skin of his flesh. Then he will be brought to Aaron the priest, or to one of his sons, the priest. And we'll stop. We will stop. Okay.
How many sons are left?
Huh?
How many sons are left?
Aaron has 2 sons left. Right?
Just checking.
Okay, so what is going on here?
He's giving us instructions. If someone comes to them with leprosy.
Leprosy. Now, what is this leprosy?
Swelling of scab.
Okay.
A swelling, a scab, or a bright spot. And it shall become on the skin of his body like a leprous infection.
He's good.
So all your Bibles say leprous infection. Okay, so you guys know what leprosy is today? Hansen's disease?
Hansen's disease?
Okay, that's what leprosy is today.
Isn't that incurable?
That is incurable. Okay? That is not what this is talking about.
Oh, okay.
Your English versions do not help you out here. They call it leprosy. And maybe that's what the original name was. But whatever we named ours today for leprosy, it's not the same thing. Okay? It is not the same thing. That word is zadarat. If I pronounced that right. Okay? And this is all about this thing. It's a mark on your body.
What do you mean?
Like scab or a bright spot. It would be swelling, a bump, and bright, right?
Mm-hmm. So,
Swelling.
do not get this confused with about being sick. The reason I say this is go back to the first pages of your Bible. There was a man who sinned who killed his brother.
I just got this too.
In Cain.
Cain. He put some mark and.
God marked Cain to let the world know, don't mess with Cain. Don't think you have to take vengeance on him. I've already dealt with him. And on Cain, right, I put a mark. So on Cain, I put a mark. And here in this chapter, someone has that same mark. This, as we read this, I want you to read it as in the context that someone is doing something in secret, not confessing their sin, and God is marking them for us to see and know about it. This is not an infectious disease. If it was, the priest wouldn't go out to be seeing him.
Yeah, he'd get the disease too.
And also, one would...
What about this 10, which was healed
Who?
by Jesus? You remember?
That's a different leprosy.
Okay.
That's the Hansen's disease, probably.
Maybe. I'm pretty sure within time, stuff has changed. But this one here, as we read what's going to go on with this type of a mark or illness, it's not anything that we're common. That it can spread through someone's body, but yet I can go and be all in your presence inspecting you, and I not get it. It's not infectious. As a matter of fact, it says that it's going to be in some of your clothes and boots. When was the last time any of you guys had a jacket or a boot that had an infection?
Never.
Never. Okay.
Or what about athlete's foot? If you have athlete's foot and I put on your shoes, will I get athlete's foot?
Well, I'm sure you probably would.
Right, but this,
You
yeah.
got this
So,
at gym
that's the-
floor, you know what I mean? Or
So-
a changing locker room.
so just keep that in mind. That this is, in my opinion, this is all a spiritual sickness. That this is a spiritual illness. Okay, this is my opinion, that this is something spiritual. This is something that God is doing himself. And this is not something like the flu or,
Is any definition or explanation how this mark looks like?
we're about to read it
Oh,
here.
okay.
Yeah, you ready? So it says, verse 2, when a man will have in the skin of his flesh a rising, a scab, or a bright spot, it is the plague of Zararat in the skin of the flesh. Then he will be brought to Aaron, the priest, or to one of his sons, the priest. Okay, so if someone has a spot on them, what are they supposed to do?
Go to the priest.
So you're supposed to go, right? You're supposed to go to the priest. So the priests are also apparently your physicians here.
Family doctor.
You're your family doctor. They're going to inspect your body. Okay, so these guys were musicians, doorkeepers, what else? Help me out. Butchers, Torah teachers,
MD.
judges, right? So there's a big operation going on here in the temple.
They had
Okay,
a full schedule.
huh?
They had a full schedule.
They had a very full schedule. You're correct, Hannah.
Had a lot of appointments.
Okay, so you're gonna go to the priest, right? And they're gonna inspect your skin for you. Okay, so verse 3, the priest will look on the plague in the skin of the flesh, and wherein the hair in the plague is turned white, and the plague in sight is deeper than the skin of his flesh, it is the plague of leprosy. And the priest will look on him and will pronounce him what?
Zaraat.
Yeah, so he will be Zaraat. This guy here is going to be impure. Impure. Does that mean?
Impure and unclean. Is the same?
So yeah, so yours is going to say unclean, but the real word is tameh, which in Hebrew means to be impure. And that's purity, impure, pure, in the context of your state of sanctity to go into the tabernacle. Okay? So if you got this mark on you, you cannot enter the tabernacle because you are impure. If the bright spot is white in the skin of his flesh, and in the sight is not deeper than the skin of the hair of it is not turned white, then the priest will shut him up that has the plague for how long?
7 days.
So 7 days. So 7 days.
So he's quarantined for 7 days.
7 days he's quarantined. 7 days. You guys remember what's supposed to trigger in your mind anytime you hear 7 days?
Creation.
Creation. God's trying to make you think of the first days of creation, where he created all things and all things were good, and he rested on the seventh day and he called it holy. And he was with man in the Garden of Eden. He wants to trigger your brain to that. So for 7 days, you're going to have this retrospect of yourself. What are you doing? So it's like you got 7 days to think about, what are you doing in your life that's causing this crazy illness or skin disease to happen upon you, right? That's it. How many of you guys like being sick? Anyone like being sick? No. how much more do you like having some type of skin issue that everyone can see? You're right. It's uncomfortable to have a cough or something like that, you know, and no one can see that. They can hear it sometimes. But how much more if you just got like big old, you know, ooze, you know, this big old fleshy thing on you, or
like there's this guy at work. I'm sure you know which one I'm talking about. He's got something on his I don't know what it is, but I don't know. It kind of reminds me of that.
okay.
It's very noticeable, you know, and you see that.
I saw it yesterday for the first time. Yeah, I saw it
And
yesterday.
it's very noticeable. And you're like, what? Like, I feel bad. Like that must be.
Yeah.
Is it painful? Is it like, what is that?
Or an acquaintance of mine many, many years ago, he had acne real bad, and he's looking in the mirror, and my brother-in-law Neil always made fun of him, but he had acne real bad, and this guy's looking in the mirror, and he thought he was God's gift to women. But then he's like, why did God curse me with this? Why couldn't he have given me a heart disease or something people couldn't see? Like he was just worried about what they're gonna see.
Oh man.
So that keep that in mind, because some of this is intuitive. Some of this you have to sit and meditate on this. Like, okay, what is it like to have this mark on me?
Yeah.
Like, what kind of mark did Cain have on him that everyone could see it? Did it make him self-conscious? What are you gonna say?
I was just thinking about some other religion.
But didn't Cain say, everyone that sees me will know?
Everyone
And
that
they're gonna
sees
try to kill
me.
me.
Yeah. So in my mind, I want to correlate Cain with what's going on here. I really do. Right? So, anyway, let's keep reading. Verse 4? 5? Thank you. And the priest will look on him the 7th day, and behold, if the plague in his sight is at stay, and the plague has not spread in the skin, then the priest will shut him up for 7 days more. Okay, so if nothing has happened in 7 days, right? Nothing has happened, then he's going to do what?
He's gonna shut him up 7 days more.
7 more days. 7 more days.
So now we're at 14 days of quarantine.
14 days of quarantine for whatever's going on in this guy's body. Okay? And the priest will look on him again the 7th day, and behold, if the plague is somewhat dark, the plague is not spread in the skin, the priest will pronounce him pure. Okay, so now this thing is going from that white to a dark. Okay, it's now going dark, and it hasn't spread. He is now going to be pure. He's going to be tahor. He's going to be pure. Interesting. What happened in those 7 days that changed this man? Like, what's going on? My opinion is these 7 days are letting him have a time of retrospect or a time of repentance. That's my opinion. Because nothing's done. He's not getting medicine. They're not giving him medicine. They're not giving him ointments. They're not giving him dates, or figs to plaster on him the way Hezekiah did with Isaiah and them. He's just in there for 7 days. And for most of you guys, if you got this random crazy skin issue happening to you, and you have to be shut, in quarantine for 7 days, no one's around you, right? It appears like no one is. What's going on in your mind? How many of you guys are going to question, like, what did I do? God, what is going on? And maybe this is some time of retrospect where you get to sit there and just examine your life. You guys ever done that before? Have a time just to examine your life, who you are, what you've become? Is it good? Is it bad? Do I need to change course? I'm under the impression that this is kind of what this is going for. Something's happening within the 7 days. There's no medicine given. There's no treatment given. There's no treatment plan, right? There's no prescription. And something is transpiring in this 7 days that is causing this to get better. or we're going to read maybe not get better. We'll see. What verse, John? 6. So it says, and the priest will look on him again the 7th day, and behold, if the plague is somewhat dark, the plague has not spread in the skin, and the priest will pronounce him pure. It is a scab, and he will wash his clothes, and he will be pure. Yeah. So what does he got to do to be pure? After
Wash his clothes.
Wash his clothes.
Wash and be clean.
Wash clothes, and what else? Wait till what?
7 days, wouldn't it?
No, after the 7 days, after the priest says that, hey, you're pure, he tells him, wash your clothes and
Be pure.
that's it, right? You're gonna wait till evening, right? And you will be pure. So wash your clothes and you will be pure. But if the scab spreads much abroad in the skin after he has been seen by the priest for his purity, or his purification, he will be seen by the priest again. And if the priest sees that, behold, the scab spreads in the skin, then the priest will pronounce him impure. It is leprosy. So if it comes back, if he has a relapse, then again he's going to be impure again. Okay? Why would it come back? Interesting. What kind of a skin disease is this?
Fungus.
Right?
They
So-
said it was a mark.
It's a mark, yeah. It's sahara. And I think there's another word in here. Let me see if I can find it. I think it was... there was another word. I'll find it later. I think it's like nega, maybe? I'm drawing a blank. Anyway, sorry. Verse 9. When the plague of leprosy is in a man, he will be brought to the priest, and the priest will see him, and behold, if the rising is white in the skin, and it has turned the hair white, and there's a quick raw flesh in the rising, well, it's an old leprosy in the skin of his flesh, and the priest will pronounce him impure, and he will shut him up, for he is impure. And if the leprosy breaks out abroad in the skin, and the leprosy covers all his skin that has the plague from his head even to his foot, wherever the priest looks, the priest will consider, and behold, if the leprosy has covered all of his flesh, he will pronounce him pure that has the plague. It is all turned white. He is pure. So he says, when the raw flesh appears in him, he will be impure.
So as long as it's just all white, but there's no raw flesh, even though it's his whole body that's white, he's clean. But if there's raw flesh appearing, boom, then he's unclean.
So if this was an infectious disease that he's talking about, you would assume that someone who's covered from head to toe, you want to stay away from them. But in this case, no. But here's where I think we have to be intuitive on this whole thing. What if John, or I won't pick on you. What if I had a mark on my side?
And it's covered.
And it's covered.
You wouldn't know.
Who's gonna know? Remember that priest that has to wear his underwear when he goes into the tabernacle? Who's gonna know? Can't he just go in? Because no one's gonna know. Or is someone gonna know?
Integrity.
God's gonna know, right? But for me, this is what we like to do in life. This is what Adam and Eve did in the first pages of your Bible. When they messed up, where were they found? Hiding. So this is interesting because what if I have this scab, this rising coming in me? I'm embarrassed. I'm pretty self-conscious. I don't want anyone to know what's going on with me. You know? Sometimes I'm afraid to ask for prayer because I don't want you to know that there's something wrong with me. but yet I've got to tell someone, like, no, you know what? I'm not going to tell anyone. No one can see it. I'm just going to hide this. My opinion, and this is just my speculation, is that maybe the person that's just covered in this thing is someone who tried to hide it. Maybe it's someone who tried to hide it, and so yet now they're covered, and they can't hide it no more. You guys ever try to hide something in your life? Whether it was something bad or just something from your parents or from your wife or your husband? You ever just try to hide something? You guys know what I'm saying? You got, over 6 million people living in Israel. Do you think all 6 million people are going to confess everything they're doing? But yeah, so that's my speculation here, is that in order for me to let the priest know, the only way the priest is going to know that if I have a mark on my body, if it's not, like on my hands or something, like if it's right here, I could wear a long sleeve and who's going to know? I'm wearing pants, who's going to know? The only way, in my opinion, that a priest is going to know is like if it's like right on my face, and if it's not, if it's somewhere else, I have to go and confess that. Because with me not confessing that, now I'm spreading my impurity to all of you unbeknownst to you. Like you don't know. And is that loving my neighbor? No, it's not. So you see what God is really trying to pull out. I know when you just read the pages of it at first glance, it sounds kind of weird and odd and strange about this, try to read this at dinner time. It's not the coolest thing, reading about pus and scabs and, and fleshy skin.
Raw flesh.
Yeah, raw
We
flesh.
ate first, right?
Yes, Hannah.
Your wife will probably kick you.
No, I've done it a few times over the years where I was reading this and she's like, right now, ew. It's like, sorry. So, but yeah, what I'm saying is you have to actually confess this to people. You're the one that has to come out and go and confess this. Sadly, I don't see a lot of people doing this. Out of 6 million, I'm pretty sure there's a handful, maybe not more, that are not doing this. And so
they should have multiple priests that they can go to.
Oh,
right?
they have a lot of priests. There's
the
thousands.
order.
There's thousands
Yeah.
of priests, right, that run this temple or this tabernacle.
'Cause it's always been meant to be broken down into smaller groups anyways. Because who wants to confess in front of 6 million people what they did?
Yeah, so you're going to the priest. Hopefully you're just going to the priest and doing this. But, so my speculation with this man that gets covered completely and has nothing to do with infectious disease, because or else who would want to be around him? But the priest goes and he says, well, he's pure. Maybe because now there's nothing left for him to hide. That's my opinion. I'm pretty sure there's other things out there, but that's my opinion, is this. If you're going to conceal it, well, then God's going to bring everything that you're doing in the darkness, he's going to bring it to light. If you didn't want to confess it, God will expose it for you. And he doesn't do it to shame you. He does it because he loves you. And he's trying to release you from those prison doors.
Truth will set you free.
And the truth will set you free, right? It will. Even, it hurts sometimes. It hurts when you got to tell somebody sometimes, But it'll set you free. And the moment you experience that freedom, hopefully you enjoy that freedom and you love that freedom and you want to stay in that freedom for the rest of your life and never go back to your times of shame and hiding stuff and guilt, right? We cool? Yep. Okay, let's keep reading. John, 15. You're the man. You are the man. And the priest will see the raw flesh and pronounce him to be impure, for the raw flesh is impure, it's leprosy. Or if the raw flesh turns again and is changed to white, he will come to the priest. And the priest will see him, and behold, if the plague is turned to white, then the priest will pronounce him pure that has the plague, for he is pure. Okay, so the flesh also in which there was a boil, even in its skin, and is healed, and in the place of the boil there is a white rising or a bright spot, white and somewhat reddish, and is shown to the priest. If when the priest sees it, behold, it's in the sight lower than the skin, and the hair of it has turned white, the priest will pronounce him impure. It's the plague of leprosy, broken out of the boil. But if the priest looks at it, and behold, there are no white hairs in it, and it is not lower than the skin, but is somewhat dark, then the priest will shut him up for 7 days. And if it spreads much abroad in his skin, then the priest will pronounce him impure. It is a plague. But if the bright spot stays in its place and does not spread, it is a burning boil, and the priest will pronounce him pure. Have you guys ever heard of the Day of Atonement?
Yep. It doesn't mean atonement, it is covering.
Right, so
You always
covering,
get
right?
hungry for that. Like, who talks about atonement?
Covering, so covering. So Day of Atonement, Day of Covering. And that's coming up in a Torah portion, in about 2 more Torah portions. It should be here. Why would you need someone to go in to cleanse your sins for you when you already had the first sin offerings in the first pages of Leviticus, and it says you were forgiven?
Already hidden. Potentially hidden.
Because they're potentially out of 6 million people, not everyone's confessing their sin and going up with their offerings. So Day of Atonement once a year was to cover all those offerings or all those sins that weren't being confessed, so that there would be no sin in the land. Right? Because even God knows that not everybody here is going to confess what they're doing. Lots of secret stuff going on. So Day of Atonement is to do that. And I believe that's the same type of thing with this marking, is that some people are trying to conceal what they're doing, and so God's putting a mark on them the way that he put a mark on Cain, saying, I'm dealing with them right now. And so when the priest sees it, and he sees that, okay, it is this mark, this zaharat, they're going to go for 7 days and have some introspect on themselves, examine their life, hopefully repent of what they found that they're doing wrong, and they come out and they're cleansed, or they're pure. Or if they don't and they're doubling down, then they continue to go back in another 7 days. And if they never come to that place of turning, then maybe they're the ones that are like just out in the camp for like a very long time, if not forever. But yeah, so I think in my mind, what I'm trying to wrestle with here is that there are people who don't confess some of the things that they're doing, that they're trying to hide them and conceal them. And I think God is dealing with them, and this is how he deals with them, in this way. My opinion. John, you raising your hand? Oh.
I was raising my hand, but sorry.
No, you're fine. Okay, so let's keep reading.
Well, I still think that it's just so interesting to go back to, I think you said it the other day, about how like God covered Adam and Eve with those skins.
Right.
You know? I still can't get that out of my mind. The covering, it keeps coming back. So there's obviously a covers the sins. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Because he knows who he chose is not perfect. He knows that we're not perfect. Because if we were perfect, he wouldn't have to give us all these instructions to love each other. Not to want to steal each other's stuff and each other's wives and children and slaves or whatever. So verse 24, if there is any flesh in the skin of which there is a hot burning, and the quick flesh that burns has a white bright spot, somewhat reddish or white, then the priest will look at it, and behold, the hair in the bright spot has turned white, and it is in sight deeper than the skin. It is leprosy, broken out of the burning. Then the priest will pronounce him impure. It is the plague of leprosy. All right. So, but if the priest looks at it, and behold, there is no white hair in the bright spot, and it is not lower than the other skin, but it's somewhat dark, the priest will shut him up for 7 days. And the priest will look upon him on the 7th day, and if it is spread much abroad in the skin, the priest will pronounce him impure. It is the plague of leprosy. And if the bright spot stays in its place and does not spread in the skin, but it is somewhat dark, it is a rising of the burning, and the priest will pronounce him pure, for it is an inflammation of the burning. Okay, so something always happens. For some reason, if it starts turning dark, is automatically, it seems, gonna be pure.
Yeah, like if it's bright, like blood is fresh, then it's bright. But when it scabs, the scab turns dark, right?
Right.
So then that's a sign of that he went from impure to pure, because it's no longer bright red, but now it's darkened.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's
So maybe it doesn't have the potential for fluids to come out of it anymore, or something of that sort. You raising your hand?
Well, not really, but it reminds me of chicken pox.
Chicken pox.
Like when they first getting them, they're kind of fluid filled and brighter color, but then when the scab comes, then that means it's like it's done.
Yeah.
And it starts scabbing. Kind of what it reminds me of.
And maybe the fluid thing is a big part of it, because chapter 12 is talking about fluids, and now we're going into these skin diseases. Maybe there is a big, it could have to do with the fluids.
Yeah, I think it has something to do with our bodies. Like in the very beginning, God's intention was that he wanted us to live forever with him, but we messed that up, and because of that, he didn't want us to eat from that tree of life, right? Until we got stuff right, in our hearts, then we can live for eternity. And so I think until then, our bodies have this life leaking out of them, whether it's like mucus or fluids, rather reproductive fluids or blood, whatever it may be. Our bodies were not designed to do that in that sense. You know what I'm saying? They weren't meant. Your body was not meant for me to take a machete to it. It wasn't meant for that. And so we know that the woman in childbirth, something happened there, right? When Adam and Eve, they ate, and then the curse came about childbearing somehow. Was there blood there before? Was there not? What did it look like? I don't know. Speculation, but something happened.
Well, were they really ever intended to have kids at that point, before the curse?
well. See, we're not even told if that happened before or after they had children, right? I think the assumption is, but it doesn't specify.
It doesn't tell us exactly when they had or the timeline of those things. Because when the boys come, because it didn't tell us, and they had 2 boys and they're 2 little babies, it just throws the 2 boys in there when they're already given offerings.
It's just like Abraham. How many children did he have?
Didn't say.
We had a lot.
Yeah, he had a lot.
Yeah,
because,
a ton.
But
at
there's
the end.
a lot of them that aren't named because
They're not really related.
after Sarah dies, he takes another wife. And even there, it doesn't mention the girls. It just mentions mostly the boys, right?
Right,
The
yeah.
males. But
All right, let's keep reading. Where was that, John? 27?
29,
29, close.
beard.
If a man or a woman has a plague on the head or the beard, the priest will... I guess a woman has a beard. If a man or a woman has a plague on the head or the beard, the priest will see the plague, and behold, if it's in sight deeper than the skin, and there's a thin yellow hair in it, the priest will pronounce him impure. It is a dry scab, even leprosy upon the head or the beard. So you guys, can you get the picture of that? In the beard or in the head, what is going to be there?
Hair, like the scab.
Thin
and
yellow
then-
hair.
That's it.
A thin yellow hair.
A thin yellow hair is going to be poking out
Of like a scab.
of like a scab or something.
In mine it says it is an eruption.
An eruption.
Yours said it was a dry scab?
So yours says an eruption.
Yeah, the last part of verse 30.
Says, on the head or the beard, the priest will see the plague, and behold, the sight deeper than the skin, there's a thin yellow hair. The priest will pronounce him. It is a dry scab. Yeah.
Yeah, it is a dry scab. That's where mine says it is an eruption.
Eruption? What does yours say, Sarah?
Then the priest shall examine the sore, and indeed if it appears deeper than the skin, and there is a thin yellow hair, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is a scaly leprosy of the head or beard.
Scaly, leprosy, eruption, dry scab. What does yours say? Verse 29.
No, verse 30, right?
Oh, verse 30, sorry.
The priest shall examine the affection. If it appears to go deeper than the skin and there is thin yellow hair in it, the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is a scaly eruption in the hair or beard.
So another word, eruption, in there.
What is an eruption?
Like a volcano erupting.
Okay. So yeah, on the head or the beard.
It's like something bursting out.
Got too hot.
But notice how this word leprosy is like on all of these contexts, right? Have you noticed the details of this skin on
Yeah,
multiple?
it's either going to be leprosy or not leprosy. If it's not leprosy, they're pure. If it's leprosy, they're impure.
But is everything described the same in all these people?
No.
No, they have different skin issues, but it's got the same word that they're using. And really that word is just a mark.
Yeah.
It's like a marking, is all it says. So God is marking people. So try not to get it as one simple skin disease or skin condition, because it's not. They all have different details going on about them. All right? Yeah. And you've never seen this before. Where else in the Bible have you seen this specific thing? This is only going to happen in Israel for some reason. Right? He woke up from his nap. Okay. And I have the answer for that later on. Why just Israel? Right? You guys ever read Psalms? Especially like the Psalms of Asaph? He's got like 12 of them. Well, in one of them, I think it's Psalm 73, if I'm not mistaken. But he starts his song off he just starts talking about how his family's righteous, he's seen the righteous, and they're suffering. But then he looks at the wicked man, and he thought that the wicked man was supposed to be suffering, supposed to be just having a hard time on earth, but they're flourishing, they're partying, they're wealthy, they got lots of possessions, and they're just their kids ain't dying, they're not sick. And he's like, what is going on? This is not the perspective of the world that I had. I thought the righteous were supposed to flourish, and the wicked were supposed to be like crushed. And at the end of his song, he comes to the conclusion. He goes, but I understand it now. Because when I come into the sanctuary, they can't hear what I hear and feel what I feel. They can't connect to God the way I can. And he says, what is my portion on earth? I don't have anything on earth, but my portion is in heaven. Oh, you, my God. Something to that effect. John?
Yeah, that's like there's two men in a hospital. This is from Billy Graham, by the way. But two men dying in the hospital. One's a poor guy and one's a rich guy. The rich guy doesn't believe in God, and he says, I got to leave my riches. And the poor guy says, I'm going to my riches. See, completely.
Yeah, don't store your treasures here on earth.
Yeah. His treasures are eternal, which is what he's going to. And the other guy thinks he's just going to die and have to leave all his wealth. Well, the part, if he's an atheist, the part that he doesn't know is he's yet going to have to pay for his crimes.
Watch this.
On top of leaving his riches.
Yeah, I think it is in Ecclesiastes that talks about, or no, it's one where it talks about you toil and toil all the days of your life just for someone else to take it. You didn't work for it.
It's an Ecclesiastes.
That's a good one right there.
So remember, we're talking about the skin condition now, but right when they left Egypt, the Lord gave them an amazing declaration, telling them if they just listen to him,
Then they won't get all the plagues.
they won't get all the plagues upon them.
That's right.
Yes, where was that?
But if they disobey, then they're going to be multiplied to them.
He says, for I am the God who heals you, right? I'm the Lord your healer. So we got on the mountain of Mount Sinai, and most of you who signed up to tell God, I am yours, you know, you're basically signing yourself up for the covenant. And the covenant is that you're going to love God with all your heart and your neighbor as yourself. And if you ever neglect to love God, right, and not keep all your vows to him, then he is going to discipline you because he loves you, and he is going to bring something upon you to make you sit and think, what am I doing? That doesn't mean everything that happens to you is his discipline. Doesn't mean everything is. But that's one of the avenues that he goes down to bring you back. So if the world is flourishing, you know, and not going through a bunch of sicknesses or skin diseases like this, it's because they didn't sign up to the covenant. So God's not going to do this to them because they're not in the covenant. Now there's other things in the world that they might do that might get them sick, but that's not particularly one of them. For you and me who signed up for this vow, you said yes to the blessings and the cursings, right? So when the cursings come upon you, you know, you should take time to think, am I not fulfilling my vows? Because God is not doing this to punish you. He's doing this because he loves you and he wants you to contemplate and meditate on your life and the course that you're going. Do I need to change course and go back to the pursuit of holiness, right? So, anyway, that's what I was getting at with the Psalm of Asaph. Okay? Where am I at? John? 31. If the priest looks on the plague of the scab, and behold, it is not in sight deeper than the skin, and there's no black hair in it, the priest will shut him up that has the plague of the seal for 7 days. Did you guys say the plague of the seal?
Mine says with the infection of the eruption.
The infection of the eruption.
In the beginning of the verse, when the priest looks at the infection of the eruption and sees that it does not appear deeper than the skin and there is no black hair in it, then the priest shall shut up the one with the infection of the eruption 7 days.
And on the 7th day, the priest will look at the plague, and behold, the scab is not spread, and there's no yellow hair in it, and the scab is not in sight deeper than the skin. He will shave himself, but he will not shave the scab. And the priest will shut him who has the scab 7 more days. Interesting. So now he's going to shave.
So if he's shaving, is he shaving his beard or his body? Or like, I guess, are we still talking about if this is in the beard?
Yeah, is this still in the beard or in the head?
Or in the head, yeah, okay.
So I'm going to assume he's going to shave either his beard or his head.
Wherever, around the scab.
Yeah.
Scab / eruption.
So this is interesting because I know when it says when they're in the book of Numbers or Deuteronomy, and Israel's going to go out and they're going to go to a nation that's not, I think it's the Moabites maybe? I don't know, but it's not that of the giants like the Canaanites or anything like that. It's a different nation because they're not going to kill everybody. But when they're going to bring the women who have not known a man, they're going to shave their head as well. And they're going to pare their fingernails or clip their fingernails, something like that, shave their head. And then I know the Nazarites, when they're done with their vow, if it's not a lifelong vow, they shave all theirs. And so the same thing here is these guys are going to start shaving. I think there's something in that, you know, there's like a humility or something that comes. And so maybe if you have this leprosy on your beard or on your head, and you're not able to hide it and conceal it like anywhere else, but it's somewhere people can see, maybe it's like more humility that comes to you in order to do this. Because like when you shaved your beard, how did that go?
Oh yeah, really.
Did it feel different?
Humbling, yeah.
It felt humbling, right?
Yeah, because it's like, you know, it takes so long to grow it or whatever. There's like a sense of pride. I mean, even I've had long hair before too, you know, and I don't know, cutting it just changes you. I don't know, just something.
Does something. Yeah, I mean, so even think about when David was king, there was another king of another nation who had died. And so David sent 2 of his servants to go send his condolences. And the son of the king that had died, his advisor said, oh no, he's just bringing these guys here to spy out the land. Like, he didn't care about your dad. He's just here to spy out the land with these guys. And so what did they do to David's servants? You guys remember? They stripped them naked, I believe, and they shaved their beards. They shaved the men's beards and stripped them naked and then sent them running back to David. And when they came to David, David said, all right, y'all just hang out here until your beards grow back and then you can come into town. Because it's kind of humiliating sometimes if you're not doing it on purpose, you know. If you had it forever and just, you know, you shave it, it does something to you. There's like a humility, especially.
It's kind of funny that now, and I don't know if it's like Roman thought or Greek thought or whatever, it's completely flipped the other way. You know, like it's proper to have it shaved nowadays. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not for us though.
No, lots of people have theirs shaved. I mean, a lot of my family started growing them. It's kind of interesting, but So anyway, he's going to shave his beard or his head, which is pretty humbling to do, right? Because a lot of people pride themselves in their hair or their beard, you know? And so if you got to shave it, there's some type of humility that has to come upon you when you do that. Because a lot of us are self-conscious about that, you know, and God tries to break us free from that. So he'll shave it. John, where am I? 34?
34.
And on the 7th day, the priest will look on the scab, and behold, the scab is not spread in the skin, nor is in sight deeper than the skin. And the priest will pronounce him pure, and he will wash his clothes and be pure. But if the scab spreads much in the skin after his purification, the priest will look on him, and behold, if the scab has spread in the skin, the priest will not seek for yellow hair. He is impure. But if the scab stays the same, and there's black hair grown up in it, the scab is healed. He is pure, and the priest will pronounce him pure. So, I dropped my marker. So if the scab is starting to come and there's no hair growing out of it, right? And it looks like it's healing up, what is the priest going to tell him?
It's pure.
That he's pure. But if he has an eruption, as John's Bible says,
And it's spreading.
he is impure. And why all of this? Why is this important for them to know about their skin condition when they're there at this time in their life? Hannah. They don't go to the temple. And now, is it just for them? It's for everyone, right? So you have to think beyond yourself. So, having these conditions, right? Having this mark, let me put that, I'll put mark. Having this mark is trying to get you and me to think beyond ourselves. Not many people think beyond themselves. Have you guys ever been to a store before and someone there is definitely not thinking about you or anyone else? You laugh, John, you got a story? You guys know what I'm talking about? Right? So this mark is trying to get you to think beyond me, myself, and I. And it's trying to make you be considerate of others, right? Considerate of others. That I am going to live such a life that John is pursuing God, and I don't want to do anything to hinder John's walk, that I would make him stumble in his pursuit of God. So if I am in a state of impurity, I am going to let him know so he doesn't defile himself and have to break his heart, and he can't go to the tabernacle, which he loves to do. Right?
Yeah.
So this is helping you to be considerate of others. Considerate of others. That's a great thing to have in your life. Very great thing to have in your life. So basically, you can't live in this community and be an inconsiderate person. You're not going to go far. What verse are we on, John?
38.
38. So if a man also or a woman has in the skin of their flesh bright spots, even white bright spots, the priest will look, and behold, the bright spots in the skin of their flesh are darkish white. It is a freckled spot that grows in the skin. He is pure. Okay, so what is going on there? You're getting a freckle, right? You're getting a freckle in that spot. And just because it's a freckle, it's not a scab, it's not hair or anything. But because it's a freckle, it means that he's going to be pure. Okay. So, if a man also or a woman has in the skin of their flesh bright spots, even white bright spots, the priest will look, and behold, the bright spots in the skin of their flesh are darkish white. It's a freckled spot that grows in the skin. He is pure. And the man whose hair has fallen off of his head, he's bald, yet he is pure. Who do you guys remember was bald in your Bible? He was a bald prophet. He got made fun of for being bald. Who? Elisha. Elisha.
Yeah, where the bear comes and kills the youth that were making fun of him.
He's a bald man. So, does it make you immoral if you're bald? No, right?
Maybe he had a big beard still.
Maybe he had a big beard still.
Yeah, that would compensate.
Yeah. And just a sidetrack, when it says children were making fun of him, they probably weren't just children. They were probably older than that.
Yeah.
They're probably men. Just the way the Hebrew, Eladim and all
Young.
that. Huh?
Yeah, younger men.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, if there's a bald guy, if the man whose hair has fallen off his head, he's bald, he's pure. So basically they're saying if you see a guy losing his hair, he can still come into the tabernacle. Don't excommunicate him from here just because he's losing his hair. Okay? Or if he lost it completely, he can still come in. He can be bald and come into the tabernacle. He that has his hair fallen off from part of his head toward his face, he is forehead bald, but he is pure. So I guess he's just going to have the forefront of his hair gone. I don't know. But just going to have some hair in the back, maybe. Yeah, whatever that type of baldness is. He's still pure. Okay? If there is in the bald head or bald forehead a reddish white sore, it is leprosy having sprung up in his bald head or his bald forehead. So if you got this reddish white sore coming up, all I can think about when I hear about boils and sores, I think about Job. I think about him, how he was like trying to scrape them off. You guys remember that? He got like some of the potsherd and he's trying to scrape them off. But anyway, I don't know why that comes to my head, but anyway, if he has that on his forehead or his bald forehead, it is leprosy springing up. So the priest will look upon it, and behold, the rising of the sore is reddish white on his bald head or his bald forehead. As the leprosy appears in the skin of his flesh, he's a leprous man. He is impure. The priest will pronounce him utterly impure. His plague is in his head. This one says utterly impure.
Mine says without fail.
Without fail. And what is it? It's just that reddish white sore, right? And all it takes is one, apparently, to make you impure. Okay? Just one. So the leper in whom the plague is, his clothes will be torn, his head bare, and he will put covering upon his upper lip, and will cry, impure, impure. Or, what is it? Tameh, tameh. Right? And he will be defiled all the days in which the plague will be in him. He is impure. He will dwell alone. His habitation will be outside the camp. Okay, so this is key. Who's going to have to go outside the camp here in this context?
The leper.
All the lepers? Or just the bald one?
In this case, just the bald one.
That's what it seems like. Does it not just seem like if you're bald and you got leprosy on your bald head, your forehead, you got to be outside the camp? Or is it a different context?
And then a covering on your upper lip, like what's over that?
So this is interesting, right? Because maybe he's changing gears. I don't know. But right now he's talking about the guy with the bald head or the bald forehead, right? His plague is in his head, and the leper in whom the plague is, his clothes will be torn, his head bare, and he will put a covering upon his upper lip. I don't know what the covering looks like.
His head bare. That
So
means he shaves his head.
So maybe he wasn't the bald guy. Maybe it's anybody. Yeah, so I don't know what the covering of the upper lip would be, but they're going to cry, impure, impure, and they're going to be defiled all the days in which the plague will be in him, so he's impure. He will dwell alone in his habitation. He will be outside the camp. Well, why are you going to be outside the camp?
Because it's contagious.
Now, I don't think it's contagious. I don't think the skin disease is contagious. I think your impurity is contagious. I think that's more important. The impurity is contagious. The skin disease is not really contagious. I think it's the purity state that's more emphasized here. So they're going to be outside the camp. So if you're outside the camp, what does that kick you further away from?
The temple.
The temple, the God, right? That's where you want to get close to. But you're doing something in your life that is causing this skin disease to come upon you, where you have to now be isolated outside the camp. Not because of your disease necessarily, but because of your impurity. And your impurity is not going to allow anyone to go in there. And the whole point of the tabernacle is to be in there, is to meet with God. It's the tent of meeting, right? And so you, if you're not considerate of others, are going to be the cause of people ending up like Nadab and Abihu, dead in God's living room floor. Do you want to be the cause of that? This is where, you don't want to be a stumbling stone for somebody, right? So what you do is you become considerate of others. So you know what state you're in to help others out. Every day of your life, you live for the glory of God, right? You have clean hands and a pure heart, and you watch your lips. Sorry, go ahead.
But to even know how to do that, wouldn't you say if we're all following his ways, if we're all following biblically, then we wouldn't have to wonder who's doing what? Because it's not about this person or that person, but what Yahweh says. If we're doing what Yahweh says, then it wouldn't matter if who's doing what, right?
So if we were all living perfectly, you are correct. It wouldn't matter. But because we don't, actually, you know what? No, not necessarily. Because this is not just about, okay, in the condition of the skin, yes, but not in the condition of the woman that had the babies. Because that's not a sin, and that's not living wrong or right. Right? That's not a moral failure to have a child or to be a midwife or something of that sort. So not being able to go into the tabernacle in that sense is not something morally bad. But in this sense, maybe, yeah, if we were doing everything right, you would be loving God and you would be loving your neighbor. Okay, so in this context, yes, you want to be considerate of others, and yes, we want all of us to be doing things biblically and holy and in purity, but God knows that that's not always the case. There's always someone in there that's, for some reason or another, is trying to hide something, doing something in darkness, which is not good, right, in the least bit. But I think this is trying to get us to be sanctified, basically getting us from being imperfect people and trying to make us to be those perfect people, living in God's image and likeness. And so that, the beginning of that is making us considerate of others, right? When we start thinking about others above ourselves, we become more like God, right? Knowing that I'm in an impure state, I'm going to let John know in case he wants to go to the tabernacle today, so he can remain pure, so he can go into the holy, right? So, consideration of others is very important in this walk of life. John, help me out.
47.
You're the man. So the garment also that the plague of leprosy is in, whether it is a woolen garment or a linen garment, whether it's in the warp or the woof of linen or of woolen, whether in a skin or anything made of skin, if the plague is greenish or reddish in the garment or in the skin, either in the warp or the woof, or in anything of the skin, it is a plague of leprosy, and all will be shown to the priest. Okay, Kyle.
I was just wondering what's gonna happen after. You gonna burn it or what?
So where is this leprosy happening now? It's not on a person anymore, it's where?
In a garment of leather or wool or linen.
Okay, so it's going to be in wool or linen
Or leather.
or the skin of something, right?
And that's just kind of further proving that it's a mark. Because it's making it.
Can your how many of you guys have ever had someone who had leprosy and their clothes also had leprosy? And has anyone ever had their t-shirt diagnosed with Hansen's disease before? No, right? So this is something completely different than. This is why I believe, I'm with some of those in the commentary, that this is something very spiritual to national Israel back in that day. You know, maybe some days today, I don't know if God still does that to people today. He gives you something that no one's ever seen or heard of. I don't know. But I know here, this is interesting, right? You're going to get your your wool or your linen or skin is going to have the same mark. It's going to have a mark in it. Okay? But here goes again, that you can have skins of animals in your house. And those things in themselves are not going to make you impure. Okay? Made of skin. And if the plague is greenish or reddish in the garment or in the skin, either in the warp or in the woof or anything of skin, it is a plague of leprosy. All will be shown to the priest. Okay, so he's going to have this mark of green or red. Green or red, you're right. In any of that, they're going to show it to the priest.
So I'm just thinking like blood or pus. I don't know. It's just, I don't know what it is.
But how is that? How is a piece of linen going to get this?
From your body, maybe?
Right? How is a piece of skin?
It's a contamination to me, you know?
Well, nothing else is spreading. I mean, it's not spreading to other people. It doesn't say, hey, don't stay away from them or else you're going to get this disease too. There's nowhere in here it says that, right? That it's going to be spreading to people or to things. The only thing that's going to be spreading is your impurity, you know? So, let's read. 50. And the priest will look upon the plague and shut up the one who has the plague for 7 days. And he will look at the plague on the 7th day. If the plague has spread in the garment, either in the warp or in the woof or in the skin or any work that is made of skin, the plague is a malignant leprosy. It is impure.
Here's
Okay.
your answer.
What?
He asked what to do with the garment.
What do you do with it? I got to keep reading? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Are you reading ahead now too or what?
Sorry.
He's reading ahead too. Okay. He will therefore burn that garment, whether the warp or the woof or woolen or in linen or anything of skin, in which the plague is. It is a malignant leprosy. It will be burned in the fire.
See, and then that just to me seals it for me that it's, and when he shuts him up, I think it is contagious to me, because why is he shutting him up? And then he's burning his, and then he's burning his garment. To me, it's like a contamination. But just the way I see it, I mean,
Is that
maybe later on I'll see it differently.
K-I?
Yeah, skin. Where, this one?
No, the one there.
The
Oh,
ski-
yeah, I was...
Ski mark.
Here,
Ski mask.
I have a eraser somewhere. Will that help you out?
Yeah, I can't remember.
I didn't have my eraser, so I just...
Oh, I'm gonna heavily edit it. There's a lot of things in there I want to cut out.
Okay. So yeah, so you're gonna burn it, right? Boom, it's burned. And that's your answer, Mr. Kyle.
I probably have read that before.
I think you read it because you jumped ahead on the greenish reddish part.
You know, I'm gonna.
Because even John
I'm gonna
agreed
get
with
you
me.
on this.
Well, you did read it.
I did
That
read
was
it.
my mistake.
Oh, it
I
was
was just
John's
playing
mistake.
along with him.
Okay.
Well, you gotta have a little fun every now and again.
I love my brothers. Okay. So it is, where was I at? We're gonna burn it, right?
53.
So yeah, we're gonna burn this thing for Brother Kyle. And the priest will look, and behold, the plague is not spread in the garment, either in the warp or the woof, or anything of the skin. The priest will command that they wash it, in which the plague is, and he will shut it up for 7 days more. And the priest will look on the plague after it's washed, and behold, the plague has not changed its color, and the plague is not spread. It is impure. You will burn it in fire. It is impure, whether it is inside or outside. So if it's not getting any better, you're still going to burn it in fire. Right? He gives it 7
But
more days.
you can wash it.
And see if it's going to make it
Yeah.
better.
Wait 7 days, right?
And wait 7 days, and if it still doesn't get better, then you burn it. So yeah. So yeah, I hope he had more pairs of linen or wool. I know today linen's pretty pricey, depending on you look for it, where you get it. If you're not robbing it off your curtains or something. So anyway, yeah, so you're gonna burn this one too if it doesn't get any better. Whether it's on the inside or the outside of it, whether people can see it or not see it. Like, oh, I'm gonna wear that. No one can see that mark on the inside. He's like, no, you're gonna go burn it. Here we go, 56. If the priest looks and behold, the plague is somewhat dark after the washing of it, he will tear it out of the garment, or out of the skin, or out of the warp, or out of the woof. And if it still appears in the garment, either in the warp or in the woof, or anything of the skin, it is a spreading plague. You will burn that in which the plague is with fire. This is interesting, because it didn't say that the person was spreading anything to anybody else. But this garment is spreading, I guess, to other garments, maybe? I don't know.
So, dumb question, but what is warp and weft?
Woof?
Or woof? Mine's,
Yeah.
how's woof spelled?
W-O-O-F?
Because mine says W-E-F-T.
Oh, okay. So that is the warp of the woof, Sarah. Don't help me if I'm wrong, but I believe that's the weaving pattern. Whether you're weaving.
Yeah, that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah. So it's like, so now it's almost like the priest is like your tailor, because he's now cutting out patches of your clothes and going to try to repair your clothes for you here. So he did you. He's going to do your clothes, and I think next Torah portion. He's gonna do your house.
You're jumping ahead.
I know I'm jumping ahead like Kyle and John. They're good at it, so I'm jumping ahead with them.
It's like what's good for the goose is good for the gander.
Okay, so it's a spreading plague, and you're gonna spread that. So it's a spread. You're gonna burn it in fire, right? So verse 58. Is that where I'm at? So in the garment, either the warp or the woof, or whatever thing of the skin it is, which you will wash, if the plague is departed from them, it will be washed the second time, and it will be pure. So if you had this mark in your clothes, the linen or the wool or the skin, and you guys washed it, and it's getting better, and it's gone, or you cut it out and you washed it and it's gone. You wash it one more time and it will be pure. Okay? It will be pure. This is the teaching of the plague of leprosy in a garment of wool or linen, either in the warp or the woof or anything of skin, to pronounce it pure or to pronounce it impure. So this is all about pure or impure. That's what this is all about. Ultimately, to make you holy or to go into the holy. Because that's what it's all about. That's what this is all about. And it's all about getting us in the state of holiness. Because remember how God ended Leviticus 11. Be holy because I am holy. So thus you be holy. That is God's thing. So for someone to tell you that you can never be holy, no. God is saying be holy because I'm holy so you can get into my space. Because I want you with me. Right?
Yeah, it like holy meaning set apart doesn't always necessarily mean set apart. It's like set apart for God. We come into, we're just trying to be more like him because he doesn't want to destroy us in his presence.
Right.
I guess the way that what I've learned recently, you know?
Yeah.
Like just like whatever happened with the brothers, the brothers.
Brothers, Cain and Abel?
No,
Abihu and
yeah.
Oh, Nadab and Abihu.
Nadab and Abihu. Like, did they die because did God kill them? Because I wasn't here for that Torah portion.
Oh, okay, you were here.
Did they die because God killed them, or because they were impure in a pure presence? You know.
So Nadab and Abihu, they did what Aaron was supposed to do. So basically, they took on their dad's position. They robbed him of his duties and thought that they were better than him, I guess. And according to God, the first thing that God says right after that he consumed them was, don't be drunk. So it's almost like he repeated what Noah did and was drunk. They got drunk, lost their sense of, right and wrong. Adam and Eve eating from good and evil instead of the tree of life. They wanted right and wrong. So it's basically Nadab and Abihu did two things. Either what it appears is like they got drunk, and because they got drunk, they took on more responsibility that was allotted to them because they thought that they could do that. And because of their intoxication and impairment, made that decision, and God killed them because they did it in God's living room. Just like Adam and Eve did it right in God's, in the garden.
Right.
And so.
But like you said, he consumed them. And like in other places, it talks about like he doesn't want to consume us.
Yeah.
Like that's not he's not trying to. It's just that's what happens when we're impure in his presence.
In his living room, yeah. Like right in his throne room, in his living room, like there's zero toleration. So he says, make sure, like, you are prepared for this. Why wouldn't you be? He's the creator of all, and you're about to walk into his space and not show him reverence. He's like, really think about this. This is far different than you going to your little Bible study or little church building or something. I know we call it like the house of God, but it's not necessarily his living room.
I think it's his Holy Spirit that's here.
Yeah.
There I am. If there two or more gathered in my name, there I am also.
Well, that's actually a counseling scripture.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, because he's here when I'm by myself. He's with me. When you're by yourself, he's with you. You don't need to call a friend and like all of a sudden God's going to show up. He's there with you wherever you're at, even when you're alone, especially when you're alone. So yeah, that's our Torah portion. That is our Torah portion. You have any final thoughts there, Missy? No?
I think it's a lot. It's kind of not like what other Torah portions are. We're starting to get into more what people would consider legalistic stuff, but there is definitely some hidden gems in there, like the impure and the holy, and then how they can, we have to be pure so that we can, be set apart. How we don't, that we don't rub off,
Right.
So there's some hidden gems in there.
Yeah, it's like, how is anyone going to know if you have a mark on your back
There's
or
the
your
integrity
stomach?
part of it,
Yeah.
confessing your sins. There's a confession here.
You know, like you can't, no one will know unless you confess that and come, you know. You guys ever read James chapter 5 or Jacob chapter 5, whatever you want to call it?
Probably
You know?
Jacobus in German.
What is it?
Jacobus,
Jacobus.
which is
Jacob, right?
Yeah.
Yaakov. So if you read Jacob chapter 5, and he talks about anyone who's sick and they want to be healed, he says, let them confess their sins, right? Let them come to an elder, to a righteous man. Let them anoint him with oil, and the prayer of the righteous man will avail much, and that man will be healed. So when someone comes, A, they have to confess, present themselves and confess what they've done. B, so this oil is going to do something for them, right? And C, they have to make sure they choose a righteous man because his prayers avail and unrighteous people don't. So you have to have like the recipe for a healing is confessing, oil, and a righteous man to confess that to, and him to pray and anoint you, right? And heal you. So yeah, so this all ties in to the whole storyline of your Bible, from Cain being marked to this mark, to integrity and restoring us back to holiness so we can ascend to the hill of the Lord. Remember, Exodus ended, Moses couldn't enter. And that's the thing, is it's called the tent of meeting. It's the place where we're supposed to meet. There's a problem if we can't meet there. And Nadab and Abihu, they entered for us and we were excited, and then they died. And like, that's still a problem. First we couldn't go in, now we could go in, but people are dying. So God is further trying to instruct us on how to go in there and live in his presence. Hannah.
I think they should have known that they should have started at a good spot because they're the first. They weren't like the third or second. This wasn't the 100th time they'd been in the first.
Right. And so what does that tell us? That the very first priest that ever walked in the tabernacle died. What does that tell us?
they probably didn't take it very serious.
They didn't take it serious, and it tells us that if you're a perfectionist and you want everything perfect in your life or in your synagogue or your church, whatever, you should probably think again, because the very first high priest worshipped it, made a golden calf and worshipped it, and he still got to remain the high priest. Ironically, it's interesting. And then his sons followed suit right after him, and his two sons ended up dying in the very first service. It's not going so well. And it's just a pattern of every time we try to get back and God tries to restart the world. Adam and Eve didn't do great. Noah didn't do great. And now Nadab and Abihu, in the restructuring of the tabernacle like a portable Eden, they started off on the wrong foot. Just like Noah started off on the wrong foot, just like Adam and Eve started off on the wrong foot, Nadab and Abihu started off on the wrong foot. And hopefully we learn from this and we don't start off on the wrong foot. And we go in a direction that they never went. And that's the path of holiness and perfection, right? Even if the world tells you, you can't be holy, you can't be perfect. Well, you know what? We're going to try. We're going to try, you know?
Narrow path.
Yeah. So that's our Torah portion. You guys ready to pray? Father, we thank you so much for our time together. Lord, we ask that you would help us, Father, in this world of naysayers, Father, and of people who want to pull us down and get us off of your path, that you would help us, Father, to forever remain on the narrow path that leads to that narrow gate, Father. Help us to be committed, Father. Help us to persevere. Father, help us that our faith would never fail. Lord, help us to be those, Father, who persevere, who endure to the end, who are faithful to the end, who love to the end, Father. Help us to love you and others, Father, to the very end. Give us the passion, give us the zeal, give us the resolve, Father. Give us your grace, your power, Father, to overcome the world Father, and see us through this all, Father. Come and complete the very work that you have started in each one of us. In Yeshua's name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
Shabbat Shalom.